Hi, I'm Dr. Amy French of the Delta College History Department. I'm professor of history here, and today I'd like to take you through some of the women who were on the Women Who Dared tour, but unfortunately their cutouts were lost. The Women Who Dared tour, the last time we had exhibited it was in 2020 when the pandemic hit. The cardboard cutouts were up, and unfortunately we all know how that went and played out. And so the few of the cardboard cutouts were lost. And so we're going to just overview them via Zoom. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you women who dared the missing women. And so here are some of those women. They were in the tour before, and one of them, we'll just go alphabetically by a first name because on the committee, and I am one of the co-chairs of the committee. And we've always referred to the women from the very beginning by their first names. From the very first time, Cindy was originally in the tour. She was one of the very original women to be in the Women Who Dared tour. And we've always thought of them as their first name. And so as opposed to alphabetizing them by their last name, we just always have alphabetized them by their first names. And so Cindy was born in 1954. She is an American photographer who began studying photography while at the University College of Buffalo in New York. And she's played a pivotal role with revered images in order to challenge popular culture and the power of mass media. Some of her famous works include photographs of herself as characters from B movies, as well as photographs of herself imitating paintings from old masters, including works of Caravaggio. If you're familiar with him, he was a Baroque painter in Italy. Kind of a scandalous painter, by the way. Next, we have Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. We had chosen this image. This is them together because they were quite the suffrage duo. Cady Stanton was a women's rights activist, as was Susan B. Anthony. Stanton was married. Anthony chose to remain single so she would not lose her rights as a woman because at the time, married women were legally basically dead. They were under what was called coverture. And so they were covered by their husband. She did not want that. Both of them were tireless champions for women's rights, though. Cady Stanton helped organize the first Women's Rights Convention in 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York. And along with Susan B. Anthony, they both traveled the country holding more conventions. In 1869, she founded the National Women's Suffrage Association. And Stanton held that, Elizabeth held that position as president until 1892. They worked together on women's rights journals like The Revolution, and Stanton worked on the first 3 volumes of the 6 volumes history of women's suffrage. And they both were pivotal. Neither of them lived to see the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, but they both were, so influential in getting that amendment passed. Next, we have Frida Kahlo. And this is an image that has been altered again. I had a hard time finding this image. And this image has often caused a lot of people to question the original image. Her breasts are bared because this image she was a Mexican painter. Frida Kahlo lived, and I forgot to tell you when Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony lived. They both lived from the early 1800s, and they both died right after the turn of the century. Both died in the very early 1900s. Frida Kahlo lived from 1907 to 1954. And she was a Mexican painter, best known for her surrealistic self-portraits like this one. She had a very volatile marriage with another painter, Diego Rivera, who's probably very well known for his murals Detroit industry down that can be seen in the Detroit Institute of Arts. Her work is celebrated, though, for its uncompromising depiction of the female experience. And this picture, this painting here, is called The Broken Column. And I had a hard time finding anything that wasn't already edited. Any images that I could find that were of that I could take, that I could use and in an open format, had been edited and had and this was the one that at least didn't have a huge white block right through it. But this one had been altered too. You can see it has Deviated Art Productions through it. But this is, the painting was painted shortly after she had undergone surgery because she had been in a horrible accident, a bus accident. And so this surgery had been an operation on her spinal column, and she was left bedridden. And so she's enclosed after the surgery, she was enclosed in this metal corset. And so you see the nails, and the nails symbolize the pain that she had been in after the accident. And you see the exposed spinal column here, this metal, the exposed spinal column. And she's in like an arid desert here. Next, we have Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, born in 1947, is one of the most powerful women of the late 20th and early 21st century. She's a lifelong activist for women's rights. She served as a New York senator and Secretary of State under Barack Obama. She was the first woman to run for president under a major political party ticket. Her biography is a story of one woman who challenged gender norms and social confines, and she continues to fight for women's issues. And then we have Malala Yousafzai, born in 1997. She is a Pakistani girl who became famous for her activism in the fight to allow girls in the Swat region to attend school. In October of 2012, she survived an assassination attempt by the Taliban. She was shot in the head as she walked to school. And she recovered and formed the Malala Fund to support her efforts to make sure that girls receive education. And, Next, we have Margaret Thatcher, 1925 to 2013. Margaret Thatcher was the first woman to lead a major Western democracy, serving as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1979 to 1990. Nicknamed the Iron Lady for her uncompromising political stances, Thatcher was one of the most influential political figures of her era. Through a series of controversial changes, she revolutionized the social and economic landscape. She advocated the ideals based on free enterprise, public spending cuts, limited money supply, and she raised interest rates. Her programs did not go unopposed. She was opposed by labor unions and the Labor Party, who were quite upset with her over the time. Her strict responses sometimes, garnered her the nickname, Iron Lady, but were generally appreciated by the Conservative Party. And so although she was a polarizing head of state, Thatcher served as British Prime Minister for longer than any other official in the 20th century. And then we have Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She lived from 1933 to 2020. Ginsburg was only the second woman ever named to the US Supreme Court, the first being Sandra Day O'Connor. She encountered gender discrimination early on in her legal career, starting with questions about why she was taking a man's place at Harvard Law, and continued struggles to find a job after she graduated from law school. She co-founded the Women's Rights Law Reporter and founded the ACLU's Women's Rights Project. She co-authored the first textbook on sex discrimination, published in 1974, and she argued many cases involving sex discrimination in front of the Supreme Court. She's seen by many as a feminist icon and as a champion of social justice. And our last woman missing from the tour is Sojourner Truth. Born in 1787 and died in 1883, Sojourner Truth was an African-American abolitionist and women's rights activist. Sojourner escaped from slavery and fought the illegal sale of her son through the court system. And in 1851, she gave her famous speech, "Ain't I a Woman," at the Ohio Rights Convention. From her speech, she said, "If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they is asking to do it. The men better let them." She fought after slavery was abolished in America. She turned her sights on women's rights. She fought for suffrage, and she spent most of her life traveling around, speaking on issues of social justice and rights for African Americans and for women as a whole. And she spent out most of the rest of her life then in the western side of Michigan. And that concludes the missing women who from the Women Who Dared. The Women Who Dared tour was a tour of large life-size cardboard cutouts of women who dared to step out of their cultural and social confines of their day and made history, though history is made every day by women around the world, and not all of it is ever recorded. We can't possibly record all the history that's being made by anyone, man, woman, or not. But we tried to, at Delta for over a decade, recognize for Women's History Month the contributions made with these life-size cardboard cutouts. And now we're reconfiguring that tour and re-envisioning it and trying to make it digital. And so this video is part of that. And I hope you enjoyed these stories. I'm Dr. Amy French, professor of history at Delta College, and this was the Women Who Dared digital edition of the tour. Thanks, and have a great day.